Well, boys, it's been a wild ride, and now we are into part 3 of the 3-part series. I don't know why I decided to do this, or why I decided to do this now. It's been a crazy summer in the free agency thing. This has taken a long time to edit. By the way, why are you actually watching this? Listen to it. You don't need to spend screen time watching me talk and watching me play awful basketball footage. Just listen to it. Thank you. Let's get into the video. Let's start off by talking about a team that I forgot to talk about earlier, and that would be the Atlanta Hawks. And when you're talking about the Atlanta Hawks, you obviously have to start with Trae Young. He is the point guard that started out the season pretty bad. Except for November, that was pretty good. I'm not going to get into the details, but they were pretty bad, especially his shooting percentages. His points were okay, everything else was okay, but the shooting was awful. But to end the season, he was amazing. He went off for 30, 49 in one game. He was always a great playmaker, but his assist numbers went up. He averaged around 43% from the field in March. That dipped down as it went on, but he was still amazing. And then well over 40% from the field. And I'm talking about his season in halves because it really was a season to be talked about in halves. And they probably lost out on a lot of players in the draft. I think Mojo99 had some great draft predictions. He said they should take Jackson Hayes and Jarrett Culver. But they managed to get instead Jackson Hayes, who they traded away, but that's fine, they have other opportunities in the future. And then they also drafted Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter, which is kind of like Jarrett Culver, but split into two players for each skill set. I think that both of those players will turn out great. Hunter is more certain than Reddish because, well, 3-and-D guys are always more reliable than playmaking guys. And I think this is a good team around him. Both of them can shoot. Both of them can defend. Reddish can alleviate some of the playmaking duties, which is what they would have wanted Culver for. John Collins is obviously a great power forward. He's awesome. But the one hole that they need filling is the center. And the solution to that problem could be found within a year. Because they have 3 massive expiring contracts in Chandler Parsons, Alan Crabb, and Evan Turner, which combined take up about $50 million in cap space. Lose that, you have room to sign like Maurice Harkless to be a backup small forward, and then trade away DeAndre Bembry for some backup point guard on a big contract like, say, Patty Mills, and then just absorb Steven Adams into cap space. That gets you up to still only like $97 million on salary. They picked up Jabari Parker on a 2-year, $12 million contract. That was kind of to replace Omari Spellman, who they traded away for Damian Jones and I think a draft pick. That decision was okay, I guess. I don't know. He's no Omari Spellman, but I don't know if Omari Spellman was even Draymond Green. That's a good value pickup, especially considering, the money that he made last year. By the way, I forgot to mention that the Toronto Raptors managed to snag up Rondé Hollis-Jefferson. He's a good player, young, can do pretty much anything. Back to the Hawks, they do still have Kevin Huerter. He's a great player. He's a good foil for the playmaking backcourt duos, playmaking and stuff. He's pretty much there to shoot and be a shooter. He's pretty good at that. He had some good moments last year. And he will probably be a very good, very important piece of this core in the future. Now let's talk about the ultimate goal of this team. I think that this core will not be a championship team. That is, if nothing else happens. But I think that they can at least end up being a perennial conference champion contender and won't be the Toronto Raptors. They'll be like, if the Toronto Raptors were better, maybe they make one finals appearance. I don't know. If Trae Young really lives up to his potential, they could win a championship. And I think training for Steven Adams would help them do that. He is a very good player. He can foil for John Collins. He can foil for Trae Young. He can foil for pretty much all of the players. He's the missing piece in this team. I think they just, next year, let go of Alex Len, no matter how okay at being big he is, and just take up, Steven Adams. Because Steven Adams is good. And the Thunder don't want him. They're in the middle of a rebuild. So, yeah. Get Steven Adams. He will be great for you. And I think they'll be good. Wow, I spent too long talking about the Hawks. Let's now talk about the New Orleans Pelicans. They got probably the better end long-term of the Anthony Davis deal. The pieces that they got were Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram, some draft picks, some rookies, a pick that turned into DeAndre Hunter, which they traded for a pick that turned into Jackson Hayes, and pretty much not much else. Oh yeah, they also got Josh Hart. They signed a bunch of guys, namely JJ Redick, and basically they signed Derek Favors. They took him into salary, so that was basically a free agent signing. And oh yeah, just as a little side note, they got Zion Williamson. I'm pretty sure that Zion Williamson's career path will just follow Anthony Davis, where they trade the last star for a bunch of guys, they luck into the number one pick, they draft a superstar who set records playing at a blue blood school, and the players that they traded for get injured or they leave. But for real, I think this time it's going to be different. Brandon Ingram, if he doesn't become like the next Chris Bosh, could end up being pretty great. If Lonzo Ball doesn't end up developing into like a total bust, and he becomes not what everyone thinks he's going to be, but what's ideal, basically what Jason Kidd would be in today's era, then I think he'll be fine. JJ Redick, really good shooter, can pair him alongside Anthony Davis. Josh Hart, good 3-and-D player, fits with the timeline of these guys. Jackson Hayes, really good player alongside Anthony Davis. Drew Holiday, expiring contract. They could either trade him away or keep him and try to win with him. And then all the other guys that are good, nice to have but don't matter, like Jahlil Okafor and Kenrich Williams and Frank Jackson and Darius Bertans and Etwan Moore, guys like that. I think that the Pelicans could develop a championship roster with this core in the future. But this year, they're going to be tank commanders. Oh, by the way, I don't know if Derek Favors is a win now or just absorbs big salary into salary move, but I think it's the former and not the latter, so I don't know what the Pelicans are going to be doing. But David Griffin, he might be okay. So, are they stockpiling all these assets for a big trade for a big superstar or something? Or are they going to be the next Warriors with strength in numbers? Well, it is now time to talk about the Orlando Magic. The Fultz trade is going to be worth it no matter what. They re-signed Nikola Vucevic. I don't like that. It's a pretty big contract, 4 years, $100 million. It takes up Mo Bamba's playing time. They need to develop Mo Bamba if they want to actually improve from the ceiling that they have, which right now is what they were last year. A 7th, 8th seed, maybe up to a 6th seed, probably won't even make the playoffs for a few years. And I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to be consistent. They're trying to be the Portland Trailblazers. But, I mean, come on now, man. This isn't going to work out this way. Aaron Gordon, always going to be good. I love his dunking stuff. He's not going to be the leader of this team, but he is going to be a big part of their future. They have Jonathan Isaac, who is really good. He can play pretty much any position except for point guard. And a funky diabetic says he's like a shooting guard trapped in a power forward's body. And I guess I kind of agree with him on that. I don't know what else to say. I haven't watched him play much, so I'll use that as my argument. They still have Evan Fournier, who's on a decently sized contract. They re-signed Terrence Ross, which means they're definitely trying to keep the old core together. And yeah, the Fultz trade, as I mentioned, will work out no matter what. If he's still a bust, then all they gave up was an expiring contract. If he somehow gets past his shoulder injury issues and develops into the star that he was supposed to be, or even just a really good player, then obviously that's great for the Magic. Pretty much everyone has potential on this team who is young. Even the guys like Wesley Iwundu and Kem Burke have potential to be something. One idea that was thrown out there was trading for Chris Paul. I would say maybe they do it. It's worth the risk, but it probably won't get them over the hump of a championship. But at this point, I don't think anything will. I think that even trading for Chris Paul, that roster peaks out at a 4th, 5th seed. And this roster here could maybe be a 6th seed if all goes wrong for every other team. So, yeah, I don't like what the Magic did with Nikola Vucevic. Now we can talk about the Pacers, who have built their team up off of other teams being stupid. Example, the Suns traded TJ Warren and a mid-tier draft pick for basically cap space. They let the Pacers absorb him into salary, quote unquote, and just have him so that they could make space to re-sign Kelly Oubre Jr. And I covered this topic when I talked about the Phoenix Suns themselves, but I just want to express again just how utterly stupid that is. I mean, not really, they need TJ Warren, but still, why would they do that? Especially if they were going to make the moves that they just did. Another example, they brought in Malcolm Brogdon because the Bucks just couldn't pay for him after that max that they threw at Chris Middleton. But then again, the Bucks were forced to. Oladipo hopefully comes back good. They signed some guys. They got Jeremy Lamb. They still have Miles Turner and Domantas Sabonis. I'm pretty sure they're going to try and play them together. They unfortunately lost Thaddeus Young. But I guess now they have a very good team that peaks out at being, well, average. And that's fine for the Indiana Pacers. I mean, what more can you ask for a team like that? Let's talk about the Bucks now. As I said, that they were forced to trade away Malcolm Brogdon after they were kind of forced to re-sign Chris Middleton to a big contract. I mean, you got to keep Giannis happy. But they unfortunately lost Nikola Mirotic to the EuroLeague. That's tough. They traded away a good 3-and-D wing and a longtime piece of this team in Tony Snell for basically salary space in John Lure. They waived and stretched him That saved some money in the short term. That's fine. Not the best move, but they managed to replace him, so that's fine. They signed Kyle Korver, great pickup. They signed Wesley Matthews, another great pickup. 3-point shooter, maybe he can play some defense, but his ACL injury might hinder that. Kyle Korver obviously can shoot. Dante DiVincenzo could end up being something still. By the way, they also got Robin Lopez on like a 2-year deal, so they can now pair up the Lopez brothers. I think this year they should have Eric Bledsoe come off the bench in the playoffs at least, and then start George Hill, because Eric Bledsoe was not good starting in the playoffs last year. I think this year they will still only make it to the conference finals. I don't see them going to the finals this year. I think it's going to be the Sixers. So maybe next year will be their opportunity. That's probably when they'll have to do it, because Giannis is a free agent in 2021. So, yeah, they'll have to. Now we talk about the other team that has green colors, the Boston Celtics. They lost Kyrie, but they replaced him with Kemba Walker. And if you have to replace Kyrie with anyone, Kemba Walker's as good as anybody. Al Horford dipped on them, but that's fine. It's not. They replaced him with Enes Kanter. Enes Kanter is not Al Horford and never will be. And I wonder how their system is going to work now with Al Horford gone. Because as much as Enes Kanter is a good playmaker, I don't think teams will respect his shot well enough to where he can have an Al Horford-like effect. So if he can be as mobile as he was last year in the playoffs and be at least a better shooter than he has been in the past, then at least he can cover up somewhat for the hole left by Al Horford. Hayward contract actually now might not be so bad, because he has more of an opportunity to play without Kyrie and Terry Rozier and all these clashing heads. It's a fresh start for the Celtics. Brown and Tatum will be free agents soon, so they'll need to work on new deals for them. They now have a few more rookies, namely Carson Edwards and Romeo Langford. Daniel Tice is okay. Robert Williams III is okay. They waived Semi Ojeleye and retained Gershon Yabusele. Yabusele can really play defense, but can also kind of shoot. And I think that is about it for the Celtics. They'll probably be like a 4th or 5th seed. And that's where their roster peaks. No championships here. If Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum develop into being really good, then yeah, I sure could see them winning a championship if they surround them with the right pieces. But with this roster, no way, they don't have a good center at all. They have like 4 different average centers, and I don't think that'll be enough. They need to find something new if they want to win a championship. But until then, I guess this roster is fine. I guess now we can talk about the Chicago Bulls. I think that we're content with them being an average roster. They drafted Kobe White to fill in their hole at point guard. And now they have a trio of point guards who are all really good at being point guards and doing a lot of stuff. Chris Dunn, great defensively. I don't know about him offensively. They signed Thomas Satoransky. He is a good offensive player. He's tall enough to be okay on defense. He can shoot, probably play shooting guard or even small forward. And Kobe White is a tall, score-first point guard. I don't know how well he'll fit alongside Zach LaVine. Maybe Zach LaVine won't go all in on scoring. Maybe he'll do more off-ball stuff. They have Otto Porter, who is obviously pretty good at off-ball stuff, but can also do a lot of stuff with the ball in his hands. Larry Markkinen is just really great overall. He's an amazing shooter. He has actually drawn some comparisons to Kristaps Porzingis because people say his athleticism is underrated. I guess, yeah, maybe, sure, I can see that. But his main focus is shooting. His main weakness is defense. And I think he'll be pretty okay. He won't be amazing, but he'll be still a very good young player. The Porzingis comparison isn't perfect, but it'll do. Wendell Carter Jr. is pretty good on defense. They got Thaddeus Young to kind of replace Bobby Portis. He can't shoot as well, but he can probably provide the energy that Bobby Portis had. Denzel Valentine is going to be coming back. And I don't know much else. I don't know much about the rest of their roster. They have Cristiano Felicio on a pretty bad contract, so that's taking up some money. So yeah, the Bulls are going to be average, but that's fine. The next team on my list is the Denver Nuggets. They traded a draft pick for Jeremy Grant. This was a salary-freeing deal for the Thunder. And for the Nuggets, I think their thinking was when Paul Millsap leaves next year, they can replace him with a guy like Jeremy Grant, a guy who's athletic, can play defense really well, is a team-first guy, knows his role, and can kind of even shoot, so he's a good offensive player in that respect. I think Juan Hernangomez and Jeremy Grant can kind of be a worse but also cheaper replacement for the things that Paul Millsap has been doing. The Murray extension might kind of tie their money. Basically, here's what their payroll is looking like. Paul Millsap with his $30 million for one more year. Nikola Jokic making about $30 million per year after this season for another 3 years. Gary Harris making just under $20 million for the next 3 years. Mason Plumlee's contract is up after this season. Will Barton making about $13-14 million for 2 years. Jeremy Grant has 1 year left. That's worth like $9 million. And then Jamal Murray making like between $30 and $38 million every year. I think the $38 million part is kind of ridiculous if he keeps being what he is right now, which is an okay but not great point guard who can't play defense that well, but he's still big. He's a good offensive player, not really a playmaker, more of a shooting guard. But if he doesn't make some unprecedented jump, I think that's a pretty bad contract. Michael Porter Jr., small contract, still on his rookie deal. It's a good value. Juan Hernangomez, I'm not even going to talk about these guys, but Paul Millsap, for this 1 year that he's left, is going to probably push them to like the 2 seed again, or even the 1 seed, who knows. He's a playmaker, he can play defense, he foils Nikola Jokic, but then again, Nikola Jokic is also a passer, so yeah. Nikola Jokic obviously is awesome. You probably already know the deal with him. Can pass, can shoot, can get inside the paint even though he's not that athletic and doesn't even dunk. And then it's not so much individual defenders for their defense, it's just that they are very good on defense. Malik Beasley is a good athletic guy who can kind of score. Torrey Craig, good 3-and-D type of guy. Monte Morris had like no turnovers. And then Michael Porter Jr., people say he's going to end up being the next Kevin Durant. I think no. Will Barton is a score off the bench guy. Mason Plumlee, he can kind of just do the things that he's been doing for the last few years, which is just being a good backup center. He can play good defense, dunk a lot, just overall do backup center things. And Gary Harris, okay defender, can shoot definitely. And this whole team overall is just really good. So I'm not saying they're gonna make a championship or anything, but they're definitely gonna be really good for the next few years. Second to last is the Sacramento Kings. Last year, for a long time, they've been like the worst team in the league, the worst run organization, the worst at basically anything you can think of. I mean, they traded away Nick Stauskas for salary cap. They had DeMarcus Cousins, who was not really ever going to do anything with the Kings. But I think when the Cousins trade was first made, everyone was saying the Pelicans won because they got this superstar that they could pair alongside Anthony Davis, and they had shooters around them, and they could do a lot of stuff. They made the playoffs once in that era. And DeMarcus Cousins was injured half that year. Sure, he was playing amazing, and they were probably going to make the playoffs anyway. But, still, not a lot changed. Enough about the Pelicans. They really just jumped from a team that had no hope to a team that has all the hope in the world. They replaced Willie Cauley-Stein, who was their athletic center, with Dwayne Dedmon, who is an athletic center who can also shoot. So that's, in my opinion, a pretty good replacement. They got Harrison Barnes on a long contract, so he'll be there to fill that position of need. In terms of De'Aaron Fox, if we just forget about him with the obvious, which is him just running through everybody and being super fast, then he's still a pretty good point guard. Speed is not the only attribute that he possesses. He's a good playmaker. He's very controlled. He's a great finisher. And he is very good at just being a good point guard. He's okay at defending. He's okay at shooting. He can lead. He is a great leader, and he fits well alongside Buddy Hield. That might be the next John Wall and Bradley Beal, but without the chemistry issues, So yeah, De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, great shooter, okay defender, can play make a lot too. Overall, he is a fast runner, but that's because he hustles a lot. They still have Nemanja Bjelica. He can shoot really well. Marvin Bagley will probably end up replacing him. And Marvin Bagley has a ton of potential. He just has so much potential. He's a great athlete. He can jump out of the gym. He can dunk, obviously, and block some shots. He can kind of shoot, too. So he has the potential to be a star. Harry Giles they still have. He can end up developing into like a good backup center. People were saying he was like the future and stuff. I'd say no, not quite. But even if he doesn't end up being that, then he can still end up being really good. This team overall probably ends up being the next like Brooklyn Nets, where they're like end up being a sixth seed, and then they just get some superstars. I guess now I have some time to talk about the Detroit Pistons. Their salary is as swamped as ever. Derrick Rose kind of fills the hole that Ish Smith left. Very an improvement. He was amazing last year. I loved his 50-point game. His comeback is a great story, and it's kind of something fun for the Pistons to have with all the just being boring and blah. Blake Griffin is supposed to be fun. He's supposed to be a dunker, but his contract is mire, basically. Andre Drummond has a big contract, too. They're probably going to have to end up trading one of those players away. It should be Drummond because he's on a shorter contract, which means they'll get more assets. And he's not good alongside Blake Griffin. He's also worse than Blake Griffin. And his contract is smaller overall. Luke Kennard is one young guy that they have. He can shoot. Sekou Doumbouya, he could be like the next Nicholas Batum, or he could be the next Giannis. Either way. Or he could just be the next, like, Bruno Caboclo. They have Tony Snell now. He's a short-term guy. They probably just took him on for expiring contract stuff. And because he was better than John Lure. And beyond that, there's not much else. The Reggie Jackson deal is hurting them. And yeah, that's about it for the Pistons. Well, thank you for watching or listening to the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I was wrong about having to record in England. That's fine. I'm glad I was able to do it here. It went a lot quicker than I thought it would. So, I guess that worked out. I'm not going to be making many more basketball videos for the next, couple months, maybe. I'm going to be focusing all YouTube energy into making the stop motion and also just general time into personal stuff. So, no more inconsistent video uploads. I'm glad I could do that. Bye. Have a good day.